Before we get started though, Maono were kind enough to send this microphone out for testing and stuff, but they haven't paid me to do this review or anything, so my opinions are going to be my own. I probably said this like a million times now, but audio quality is much more important than visual quality when it comes to content for like YouTube and Twitch and stuff, because the majority of people are going to be listening to you or lurking or having you on in the background, so being able to hear you properly, hear you cleanly, and have like a microphone that doesn't sound like you're talking through a tin can is going to be a great advantage for any creator. And that's where a microphone like the PD200X comes in, because it's relatively affordable, it looks good, it actually sounds decent, but it's not going to break the bank because it only cost around £65. So for that £65 you get the microphone itself, a pop shield to avoid any plosives, a cable that's about 8 feet long, and also an adapter to attach it to microphone stands and boom arms. Before we get into this microphone's like features and how it sounds and how good it is and stuff, can we just take a second to talk about this cable? Because, well, I have a huge pet peeve usually when microphones will give you a cable but it's not long enough, and this cable is honestly amazingly long. It's like 8 feet long, which is absolutely great, but also the attachments at the end are fantastic. Right, you've got USB-C obviously to USB-A, standard pretty much cable. However, this has like a little adapter thing, which means you can have USB-A or USB-C at the end of the cable, which is great because it means I can attach it to my phone with the cable that they gave me. Because this microphone can be plugged into my phone and actually be used for recording audio, that gives me different options for making content. For example, I can use this for live streaming on Twitch or YouTube or whatever plugged into my PC. But if I want to create TikToks or YouTube shorts or something just using my phone, I can then use this microphone plugged directly into my phone and get great sounding audio for edited content. So as you can see and hear, this microphone is actually quite versatile and can be used for many different types of content. However, everything I've been showing so far has had filters on it, so I want to remove that to show you kind of how this would sound if you were buying it and just plugged it in and got it straight out of the box. So without filters, this is how the microphone sounds, and as you can kind of hear, it sounds a little bit different. It's a bit more neutral, a bit more flat. However, if you're using a microphone, most of the time you probably want to add in like EQ or compression and limiters and stuff to make it sound more professional anyway. But straight out of the box, as you can hear, this microphone isn't terrible. I've definitely heard worse, but obviously it can be improved with filters and stuff when you actually get it into post or through OBS or whatever. Something else I want to mention with this microphone is basically the fact that, well, the preamps are actually half decent on this. I've used cheap microphones before from other brands, other USB mics and stuff, and sometimes the preamps for the USB version of it aren't the best. They're usually either very hissy, very noisy, just not loud enough, but these ones are actually relatively decent because this isn't boosted in post or anything. This is literally just done with the gain knob on top of this microphone. So if I obviously watch my screen and turn the gain knob up, I think this is at full volume right now, which is still a relatively listenable level, whereas on some of the other microphones I've used before, even at full volume, they've still been like really quiet, which isn't the best because then you have to boost it up in post, then you're enhancing all of that noise and hiss. Something I love about microphones like this is obviously it's got the USB-C connection, but it also has XLR as well, meaning that when you first get the microphone or when you first start creating, you can go through the USB option, which is going to get you started and sound fine. However, you can then over time upgrade to the XLR version, which is obviously going to sound better, have more control, and be able to do actually like filters like compression, EQ, noise gate, all that type of stuff, and have extra features for improving the way you make your content. Something to remember though is if you are going to change to the XLR version of this microphone, you are going to kind of lose the RGB goodness of this. Well, technically you won't. You don't have to lose the RGB as long as you have the USB plugged into something to power this like color light as well. But if you're just going to use XLR and not have it plugged into a PC or anything, you're going to lose the mute button on here as well as this RGB light strip thing which goes around the outside of the microphone. Speaking of buttons and stuff on this microphone though, it has a mute button on the side of the microphone, which is obviously great if you want to cough or like mute yourself and talk to someone else in the room or just not be heard by chat or whatever when you're recording yourself. So if I press the mute button again, and then the audio should hopefully come back in and not have like a clicky sound or anything, because obviously I can't hear this right now, but hopefully you can't hear when I press that mute button, because sometimes it's really distracting when mute buttons are audible for going on and off. Other than the mute button, there's only really two other buttons on this microphone. One is this gain dial, which obviously changes the volume or the preamp volume of the microphone, making sure that you're loud enough and stuff, or quiet enough that you don't clip. And also there's a button on the back side of this, which if you press should hopefully control and change like the RGB lights. It's gone off now. Speaking of controlling the RGB on this microphone, as well as all the other features and buttons and stuff, is, well, Maono actually has an app which can control everything. And I absolutely love this because it's not often, or at least it's not very common that I've seen, that cheaper microphones have an app that accompanies all of this stuff. And the app for this is called the Maono Link. Once you download Maono Link and open it, you should be greeted with the actual equipment that you're using. If you click on that, you'll then be greeted with this page, which allows you to actually set up your microphone exactly how you want. So you can set the gain volume of the microphone in here, as well as the headphone volume and stuff. You can kind of do that on the microphone itself anyway, but you've got like different basic EQ options here, or you can even like edit the RGB to either be turned off or on, or even change the color of it to customize it for your own brand and stuff. I like purple for mine. But also there's an advanced version of this for those that want to dig a little bit deeper into the settings of this microphone, and especially if you know a little bit more about how microphones work. Obviously, if you want to get the most out of any microphone, you're probably better off setting up all your filters yourself in OBS, but this microphone is a beginner microphone. It's £65 or so, it's $80 or whatever, and it's not really aimed at high-end professionals. So the people who are going to be looking at a microphone like this, probably going to be beginners or someone who's brand new to content creation, so having presets and stuff in that software which can get you started and improve it from what the base kind of settings are, then that's a great thing, because obviously if you're a beginner, you're not a professional audio engineer and won't know how to set up all of these filters and effects and stuff properly to get the most out of a cheap microphone like this. Anyway, speaking of audio quality, I probably should compare this microphone to other dynamic microphones that I own, so you can get a sense of how it sounds compared to other like qualities and prices out there. So I'm going to compare the PD200X to my SM7b, and also the Fifine, or Fifine, however you want to say that, K688. Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin, thought Alice, but a grin without a cat, it's the most curious thing I ever saw in all my life. Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin, thought Alice, but a grin without a cat, it's the most curious thing I ever saw in all my life. Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin, thought Alice, but a grin without a cat, it's the most curious thing I ever saw in all my life. After listening to all the audio recordings and comparing the microphones to each other, I'm actually pleasantly surprised with how decently the Maono performed compared to the other two, because, well, this microphone is £65, obviously, so it's not going to sound as good as the SM7b. However, it doesn't sound terrible when you put it next to it. Sure, the plosives aren't quite as good, and also like the high end's a little bit harsh, and maybe it's not quite as bassy, or can deal with the dynamic range as well. But you're comparing a £65 microphone to something that costs like £300, £400 instead. And well, I don't expect them to be the same, but honestly, pleasantly surprised at how well it held up. The thing that did surprise me though is the fact that it sounds much better than the Fifine. I expected them to sound very similar in like audio quality. I thought the actual like frequencies would be very similar, it would like pick up my noise, but for some reason the Fifine just sounds a lot more muffled and lacking any type of clarity compared to this microphone. You heard the audio recordings as well, so let me know in the comments below which you preferred, and if you think this sounds better than the others, or if you even notice the difference between like the microphones and stuff. Obviously a microphone like this is very marketed towards gamers and streamers and just creators in general, so I want to do a couple of tests to kind of demonstrate how it would perform in a situation like that. So test number one is obviously going to be off-axis rejection, because most creators are obviously going to sit straight in front of the microphone, but you don't want to pick up sound from coming from the side, so whether that's people talking in the background or your PC fans or stuff happening outside the door, you don't want to be hearing that. So as you can hear, here's me perfectly fine straight in front. However, if I move around to like 90 degrees worth of this microphone, this is how it sounds now. And obviously I can't hear it right now, so I'm only going to be able to hear it again in a minute, but obviously the other 90 degrees and then obviously back to the front. So hopefully that had a little bit of off-axis like rejection and doesn't pick up all the audio in the world. Hi cat. Okay, so this little lady wanted to come and say hi while we're recording, so everyone say hi. This is Nebula. Moving on though, I'm sure a lot of you will have the question of how this copes with like keyboard clicks and mouse clicks and stuff, because that's a big part of gaming and streaming. You don't want it to be distracting for your audience. So I'm going to be clicking on this Red Dragon K552 while talking into the microphone, and you'll be able to see kind of how that sounds. So as you can hear, I'm kind of typing right now on this keyboard, which is very loud, but this is kind of how it sounds if I'm talking into the front of the microphone, while this keyboard is kind of on the opposite side. As you can kind of hear though, this microphone copes okay with that type of noise. It gets rid of some of the background stuff while still being able to hear me, but let's be honest, if you're a content creator, you probably shouldn't be using a keyboard that has blue switches, because that's just going to be way too loud and distracting and probably annoy your audience far too much. I just want to quickly talk about some cons of this microphone, because obviously it's not going to be all like sunshine and roses at £65, so it's going to have some things that aren't very good about it. So number one, it's a little bit plasticky in places, like this shock mount or the actual mount that attaches to the arm, even this lock and stuff. They're a little bit plasticky and feel a bit cheap and may potentially break if you're a little bit too rough with it, but it's fine because it's £65 and, well, you don't expect it to be made of full strong metal. Number two, plosives aren't great on this. I don't know if it's the microphone itself or this pop shield or whatever, but I had the same issue with other cheap USB microphones as well, because saying things like pizza, pasta, pepperoni, pig, just all that kind of noise, it just has way too much and is like being picked up a lot by the microphone, which doesn't sound great. Another small issue I kind of want to talk about with this microphone is, well, it's the handling noise. It doesn't really cope very well, but you probably heard throughout this video that every time I've kind of like knocked the arms and stuff, or like tried to change settings or whatever on this, you can kind of hear a lot of things going on, and it doesn't always sound great. However, try not to be as clumsy as me, and most people probably aren't as clumsy as me, so as long as you are actually a little bit like more aware of your surroundings and aren't constantly hitting your microphone and stuff, that's not going to be like a huge issue, and I'm sure it will be fine. Overall though, I think this microphone is a great budget option. Obviously, I'm not going to be changing to it for my own personal use, because I have a far more expensive, more professional setup, but for a creator who's just getting into like streaming or creating YouTube videos or whatever, I just need something that's going to sound better than just an inbuilt camera or phone microphone. This is going to be a great option, because obviously it has the USB-C, but also it has a path for like growth in the future. So if once you buy one microphone, it can actually last for a couple of years, because all you have to do is buy like an XLR option to attach it to like your PC and stuff, and then you can upgrade using filters and EQs and stuff. But if you're someone watching this review thinking of buying this microphone, honestly, for £65 or $80 or whatever it is, I don't think you're going to be too disappointed in the quality of what you're going to get. If you did enjoy this video though and found it useful, remember to boop the like button down below, and also I've got some other videos teaching you how to actually set up your microphones to get the most out of them, and I will see you all in the next one.